It's strange how a random encounter can stay burned into your memory for years, especially when it's something you can't fully explain. This happened in November of 2017, just before Thanksgiving. I was 17 at the time, finishing my junior year of high school in Portland, Oregon. It was a Friday afternoon, cold enough that you could see your breath in the air. I remember because I was sitting by myself at the bus stop outside the downtown transit center, scrolling through my phone and listening to music, waiting for my usual 4:20 bus home. That day had been exhausting. Midterm exams, short lunch, and a headache that wouldn't quit. I wasn't paying much attention to the people around me, just commuters coming and going. Nothing unusual, at least not until I noticed a man standing about 20 feet away, still, unmoving, in the corner of the terminal near the vending machines. At first, I didn't think much of it. Portland's downtown attracts all kinds of people, but when I looked a second time, something about him seemed wrong. He was wearing an old faded mascot costume, like the kind you'd see at a minor league baseball game. It looked like a giant chipmunk or squirrel, but the fur was matted, dirty, and uneven, like it had been sitting in a basement for years. The oversized cartoon head looked almost handmade, its painted smile cracked and peeling. I thought it was just some street performer, maybe a guy trying to earn a few bucks taking photos with tourists. But then I realized there weren't any tourists around, and he wasn't holding a tip jar. He wasn't even moving. He was just staring. Or at least, that's what it felt like. That huge fake smile turned toward me, perfectly still. When the bus arrived, I got on fast and sat near the back, glad to be leaving the weirdness behind. I texted my mom that I was on my way, plugged in my earbuds again, and tried to zone out. About 15 minutes later, the bus pulled into my stop, a quiet neighborhood near Forest Park, where the trees always seemed to block out half the sky. I stepped off, zipped up my jacket, and started the short walk home. Halfway down the street, I saw something that froze me in place. Standing across the intersection, behind a row of parked cars, was the same mascot suit, same cracked smile, same faded costume. He wasn't moving. He wasn't waving. He was just standing there, watching. I told myself it couldn't be the same person. Maybe someone else had the same idea, some prank or social media thing. But deep down, I knew it was him. I walked faster. I didn't run, not yet, but my hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone to text my mom that I was almost home. When I looked up again, he was gone. That should have made me feel better, but it didn't. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound outside felt louder than usual. The wind against the siding, the creak of the floorboards, the faint rattle of the fence gate. At one point, around midnight, I thought I heard something scrape against the back porch. When I peeked through the blinds, all I saw was the outline of our trash cans and the faint glow of a streetlight. Nothing else. Still, I locked every door and window before going back to bed. The next morning was Saturday. I had a shift at the small grocery store I worked at. I pushed the memory of the mascot man out of my head and focused on my shift. By the time I clocked out at 8 p.m., it was already dark, and a thick fog had rolled in off the hills. I took the same bus home, same route, same empty seats. But this time, I noticed something through the fogged-up window as we passed an old abandoned lot a few blocks from my stop. It was faint at first, just a silhouette standing near a streetlight. The proportions looked off, too broad at the shoulders, too round at the head. When the light flickered, I saw it clearly. That same mascot suit. I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears. The bus didn't stop there, thank God. But I couldn't help staring out the window until we turned the corner. By the time I got off at my stop, I was trembling. I started walking home quickly, checking over my shoulder every few steps. The fog made it impossible to see more than a few houses ahead. My phone's flashlight barely cut through it. Then I heard footsteps. They weren't close, but they were steady, crunching on the damp leaves behind me. I turned, shining my light into the mist, but there was nothing. No movement. That was the moment I started to run. I sprinted the last 2 blocks home, slammed the door shut, and locked it. I told my mom what I thought I saw, but she brushed it off, said I was probably just nervous because of the clown stories that had been all over the news again that month. I wanted to believe her, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was seriously wrong. The next day, I noticed something strange near the front steps. A small patch of mud with a single shoe print in it, bigger than mine. My mom said it was probably from the mailman or one of the neighbors, but the mailman doesn't come to the porch, and the tread didn't match any of my dad's boots either. I decided to set up the old GoPro my brother left behind from college. I angled it at the driveway and left it running overnight, just in case. The first night, nothing. The second night, nothing. But on the third night, there was movement. Around 2:47 a.m., the camera picked up something just at the edge of the frame, a figure, standing halfway behind the oak tree near the curb. Even with the low resolution, I could make out the shape, the rounded head, the faint white outline of a smile painted across it. He stood there for nearly 3 minutes, completely motionless. Then, as if realizing he was being watched, he turned away and disappeared into the darkness. I showed the footage to my mom the next morning, but she insisted it must have been someone wearing a Halloween mask, maybe a local kid pulling a prank. She didn't want to scare me, but I could see the worry in her face. We called the police that afternoon. They came by, took a look, and filed a report, but since no actual crime had been committed, there wasn't much they could do. That night, I didn't sleep at all. I kept checking the window, waiting to see that cracked smile again, but it never came back. A week later, my mom found an article online about a man who'd been arrested in Gresham, about 30 minutes from us. The photo they posted showed a man in his late 40s, unshaven, holding what looked like a tattered animal costume. According to the report, he'd been caught trespassing in backyards at night and had several complaints filed against him for stalking people around public transit stations. The suit was described as an aged, home-altered chipmunk mascot. I remember staring at that picture for a long time, longer than I probably should have, because it confirmed what I already knew. That man had followed me home. Even now, years later, whenever I'm on a bus late at night or walking alone through fog, I can feel that same chill crawling down my back, that quiet fear that someone could be watching, hidden behind a smile that isn't real. This happened back in 2012. I've never been much of an outdoors guy. Don't get me wrong, I like fresh air, campfires, and all that, but sleeping on the ground, surrounded by bugs and night noises, never sat right with me. My dad, on the other hand, was obsessed with camping. He thought the woods were where a person could reset their soul. So every summer, he'd drag me out for a weekend of mosquitoes, cold beans, and no cell service. By the time I turned 17, I'd had enough. That year, I made a deal. I'd go along if I could bring a friend. My dad reluctantly agreed, so I invited my best friend Ryan. Ryan was that kid who somehow made everything fun. He didn't even like camping much either, but he was up for anything that meant freedom from parents for a few days. My dad was bringing his old army buddy, Tom, and his teenage son, Ethan. So 4 of us kids, 2 grown men, and a long weekend in the middle of nowhere. That was the plan. We were supposed to stay at a state park deep in the Adirondacks, but when we arrived, we found the entrance roped off. According to a sign, the site was closed due to storm damage and trail maintenance. My dad wasn't about to drive 5 hours home, so he looked up a backup spot, Pine Hollow Campground. From the photos online, it looked decent. Quiet lake, wooded lots, small hiking trails. But when we got there, it wasn't anything like that. It was basically a rundown family campground sitting right next to an old drive-in movie theater. You could literally see the massive white screen from most of the campsites. The sound of trailers echoing through the trees kind of ruined any illusion of getting away from civilization. My dad wasn't happy, but with daylight fading, we didn't have many options. We set up our tents anyway. Ryan and I were sharing a small 2-person tent, and after dinner, we hung out by the fire while the adults swapped old stories and cheap beer. Once they turned in for the night, Ryan nudged me with that familiar grin. He had brought a small bottle of whiskey in his backpack, for emergencies, as he put it. We slipped away from the fire, found a spot near the tree line, and took a few sips. After a while, the glowing movie screen caught our attention through the woods. The theater wasn't showing anything, just blank white light flickering faintly. Ryan joked that we should check it out. I laughed it off at first, but he wouldn't drop it. He said we could probably climb up behind the screen, where the ladder was, and see the whole forest from above. So we went. The theater was maybe a 5-minute walk from our campsite. There was a low wire fence separating it from the campground, but we easily stepped over. The field in front of the screen was empty. No cars, no lights, no sound. The projector booth was just a dark silhouette against the stars. When we reached the base of the giant screen, Ryan pointed out the steel ladder bolted to the back. It went up nearly 50 feet. He was already climbing before I could say anything. I followed reluctantly, each metal rung freezing cold under my hands. When we reached the top, the view was unreal. You could see the lake shimmering in the moonlight, the faint orange glow of campfires, and a few lonely stars fighting through the clouds. We sat there for a while, just soaking it in. That's when we noticed something strange. From where we sat, we could see past the tree line into a stretch of overgrown grass near the back of the theater property. At first I thought I saw an animal, something moving in short, uneven bursts. Then Ryan whispered, "Dude, someone's down there." Sure enough, about 30 yards from the base of the screen, a man was crouched near the bushes. He wasn't moving much, just sitting there, swaying slightly. I couldn't make out his face, but his clothes looked filthy, dark patches all over, like he'd been rolling in mud. We sat frozen for a minute, unsure if he'd seen us. Then, without warning, the man slowly stood. His movement was strange, stiff, like his joints didn't work right. He turned toward us, or at least in our direction, and I swear he tilted his head like he was trying to focus. Ryan whispered, "Let's go." We climbed down quietly, both of us shaking. When our feet hit the ground, we heard something, a wet dragging sound coming from behind the trees. We didn't look back. We just ran. We made it to the tent and zipped ourselves inside, pretending like we hadn't just done something incredibly stupid. Neither of us slept that night. Every time the wind moved the branches or a raccoon rustled nearby, I thought it was footsteps. In the morning, everything looked normal. The adults were already up, making coffee. Ryan and I didn't say a word about what happened. Around 10 a.m., a sheriff's cruiser pulled up near the ranger's station. A few campers gathered around, while the officers spoke with one of the staff. My dad went over to see what was going on, and when he came back, he said something that made my stomach drop. Apparently, earlier that morning, a park ranger found a car half submerged in the lake just down the road. Doors open, windshield smashed. Inside, they found signs of a struggle. The man who rented the vehicle hadn't been located yet. They were warning everyone to be alert and to report anyone acting suspicious or injured. I looked at Ryan, and I could tell he was thinking the same thing I was. The man near the screen, the stiff movements, the dark stains on his clothes. We didn't say anything to my dad or the rangers. We should have, but we were scared we'd get in trouble for sneaking out. That afternoon, we packed up and left. To this day, I don't know who that man was, whether he was the missing driver, the one responsible, or just some drifter who got lost out there. But every time I drive past an old drive-in theater, that image comes back, that flickering white screen, and a dark figure swaying at the edge of the light. I don't think I'll ever forget the summer of 2017. I had just graduated from college and was stuck in that weird limbo where you're technically an adult, but have no idea what to do with your life. I was living back home, broke, and desperate for work. The kind of desperation that makes you click apply to jobs you don't even fully read. That's how I found the pool job. It was listed on a local hiring site. The title was short and vague. Night pool attendant, $28 per hour. I remember staring at the posting for a few minutes. The hours were strange. 6 p.m. to 2 a.m., 5 nights a week. Who even swims that late? But it was the rest of the ad that got my attention. Applicants must be fluent in English only. That was bolded. At first, I thought it was some kind of weird typo. But no, they specifically wanted someone who didn't speak any other language. I found it strange, but honestly, I needed money more than I needed answers. The interview happened the next day. The place was called the Mariner's Rest, a small boutique hotel about 40 minutes outside of town. It looked normal enough on the surface, quiet, dated, nothing fancy. When I pulled up, the short, friendly guy in a bright polo shirt waved me over, introduced himself as Luis, and offered to give me a tour. Halfway through showing me around, a taller man came out from behind the pool building. The second he saw me, he stopped walking and started talking to me in Spanish. I understood every word. I grew up bilingual, but something about his tone made me pretend not to. I just stood there awkwardly, shrugging. Luis laughed and said something back to him, and the tall man finally grinned, shaking my hand. "Just testing," he said, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. His name was Victor. That moment set the tone for everything that followed. The pool itself was gorgeous. Glass tiles, underwater lights, and a strange, windowless building attached to the far end that Luis called the storage room. My only job, they said, was to watch the pool, clean up, and let in people who had blue key cards. The first few nights were uneventful, mostly quiet. Every now and then, a couple of guests would come for a late swim, and occasionally someone would flash one of those blue cards. They never said much, just walked straight past me into that back room and came out about an hour later. Sometimes they carried duffel bags, sometimes backpacks. I told myself it wasn't my business. A few weeks in, things started getting odd. Guests began handing me cash when they came to swim, way more than the posted entry fee. When I tried to give change, they'd wave me off. I called Victor once to ask about it, and he just said, "People are generous. Don't question it," then hung up. After that, I started paying closer attention. There were security cameras everywhere except the storage room. That door stayed locked from the inside, and I noticed that whenever someone was in there, 2 or 3 cars would pull up quietly in the alley behind the hotel. I stopped sleeping well. My brain wouldn't let me rest. I knew something was off, but I couldn't prove it. Then one night, a little girl nearly drowned in the shallow end. I jumped in and pulled her out. Her father, who turned out to be Victor, rushed over. He hugged his daughter, then turned to me with a tight smile. "You saved her," he said. "You've earned our trust." The next evening, he and Luis were waiting for me by the pool. They handed me a glass of wine and toasted me. But as soon as I finished drinking, one of the men, someone I'd never seen before, started giving a speech in Spanish. I only caught fragments, but the parts I understood were enough. Talk about shipments, customers, and new routes. I felt sick. I realized right then that I was in the middle of something criminal. Drugs, smuggling, whatever it was real. A few nights later, while I was on shift, my mom called. She doesn't speak English, so I answered in Spanish, walking away from the pool to get some privacy. When I turned around, Luis was standing 10 feet away, just watching. He didn't say anything, just looked. Then, in perfect English, he said, "How long have you spoken Spanish?" I tried to laugh it off, told him I was learning, but he didn't buy it. He just nodded slowly and walked back inside. The next day, Victor texted me, "Come in early. We have something new for you." I didn't reply. I didn't quit. I just disappeared. I packed my things that night and left town before sunrise. Never picked up my final paycheck. Never answered their calls. For months after, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I'd see unfamiliar cars idling on my street. Once, I came home to find muddy footprints on my porch, but nothing ever happened. Eventually, the fear dulled, and life went on. To this day, I have no idea what was really going on in that pool house, and I don't want to. All I know is that I was one yes away from something I'd never come back from.